He's gone from a sporting hero to a political exile, now living happily with wife Tara and 2 children here in Adelaide. Henry was a central figure in one of the most courageous sporting protests of recent times. It was during the 2003 World Cup that the Zimbabwean fast bowler and his teammate Andy Flower wore a black armbands on the field to protest the death of democracy under Robert Mugabe, who at 115 is still alive, unfortunately. Not only that, they did it at the Harare Sports Club, just a couple of 100 metres from the President's house. The 2 players also released a 450-word statement slamming the regime and exposing incidents of torture, false imprisonment, rape, starvation. So it goes on. He had to leave not only the Zimbabwean cricket team, he had to leave his country of birth, has never returned, had to run the risk of actually never seeing his mum and dad and family again. One of the hard men of Australian cricket, our very own Ian Chappell, had this to say. Chappell said, "Courage comes in a lot of different forms in sport. You've got the courage of batsmen who face up to the fast bowling, the likes of Whispering Death, Michael Holding, Andy, Big Joel Garner. You've got the courage of Dennis Lilly, who had back problems and a number of injuries over the years. But the courage to say, I'm going to stand up to a leader who is notorious. I'm never going to be able to really understand just how courageous that move was." That's from Ian Chappell. Ladies and gentlemen, will you please give a warm welcome to now an Adelaide resident, Henry Olonga, who joins us now. Were you actually fearful for your life, knowing the sort of bloke that he was and still is, Robert Mugabe?
Well, first of all, very good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I think facing Brett Lee was probably more fearful, to be honest. But yes, I was. When we did the Black Armband protest, myself and Andy Flower, we did it in the midst of the World Cup, and we'd spoken about what we were going to do maybe a month prior to the World Cup, and we'd also talked about the permutations, the repercussions, what might happen, what the reaction of the state might be. So we knew the stakes were high. We knew that there would be possible death. We knew that there would be possible imprisonment, etc. There were many consequences that were possible, but I don't know. I put it down to youthful exuberance. I was younger then. I was a rebel with the cause, and in a sense, we just saw it through, in spite of the fear, in spite of the known threat to us. We just felt that the cause was just, and we soldiered on.
Had you discussed it with your family? I'm wondering, your mum and dad and your brothers and sisters and relatives, were they in danger as a result of what you did?
Sorry, Pilko, just trying to help you with your microphone technique there. And he was on radio as well, wasn't he? Oh, Lord. In any case, my mom and dad were in the country, and I guess there was always an imminent threat on those that were close to us. Was that your question?
Yeah. That was
But I guess in one sense, my mom was abroad. So let me just correct this. My mom was in England at the time, but my dad was living in Zimbabwe, and I didn't discuss it with him in as many words as suggesting, "Dad, I'm going to do a protest. It's going to endanger my life. It might put you under a certain threat as well." I kind of went and had a dinner with him and got his approval without him knowing that he was giving it. So I'll tell you what I did. Well, I had dinner with him and I said, you know, Dad, you think it's about time someone stood up to Robert Mugabe, don't you think? And he said, oh, yes, yes, son. You know. I said, and they should do it now, shouldn't they? Oh, yes, yes. So
Never realised.
never realized. And within a week, of course, we did the Black Armband protest. So I think if I'd told him in plain English, he would have told me I was barking mad and it would have discouraged me from doing it. But secrecy was a big part of what we did because we couldn't let word leak to the press or indeed to the powers that be that we were going to do this protest that would certainly hit the news headlines around the world. So we didn't even tell our teammates. We kept it from them until the morning of the protest. We had written the statement, as you mentioned, and Andy talked to the team prior to, or just after the toss had been done, and told them what we were doing. But by then it was already out in the public domain. So we kept it very much close to our chests until the actual moment of doing it.
Henry, how quickly did the repercussions follow? I mean, you go out there, it's being telecast around the world, the rest of the world knows that it's a protest against Mugabe. Are we talking about the next day, at the end of the World Cup? How soon did you actually have to leave Zimbabwe and get away from what was quite obviously danger? I mean, physical danger to you and, well, not so much Andy Flower, but certainly to you.
Well, I think it took a couple of days. It took about 4 or 5 days before it became obvious that the state was displeased. So the first thing that happened was I got dropped from the side. So within the next match, I suppose, they didn't pick me in the side. Then maybe 3, 4, 5 days later, the character assassination began. So they, first of all, accused us of being British paid spies, which initially incensed me. I mean, I can't think of anything more insulting. Until I thought to myself, there's never been a black James Bond, has there? So I thought, not so bad. But in any case, after that, within 2 or so weeks, and of course the chronology gets messed up in your head after 13 years, but about 2 weeks later, within the midst of the World Cup, then death threats came, and it was made very clear through various sources that we had to make plans. I certainly had to get out of the country before the World Cup was over.
Where did you go after that? I mean, you obviously can't stay in Zimbabwe. You will never be selected in the Test or the international side again. Your cricketing future is effectively, you've played cricket for them, so you can't play Test cricket for anybody else. What do you do after that? Where did you go?
At this point in time, I reckon I'd have a good shot playing for the Australian team the way they're playing. Just saying.
Just on a sad note, now this is 2003. We're talking how many years later? We're talking 17, 18 years later. Robert Mugabe, now in his early 90s, is still in power, still ruling your country. When will it ever change? Only when he dies?
Well, he's 92. He started, I can't remember what age he was when he started power, but Zimbabwe is 36 years old, so he's been ruling for 36 years. He said about 10 years ago that he wanted to retire. So, for whatever reason, I believe politically, he realized that ZANU-PF, which is the ruling party in Zimbabwe and has been for the last, for the whole of his tenure, he realized they were going to lose power because there was this other party. Some of you who are politically savvy may have heard of the Movement for Democratic Change, or the MDC, led by a man called Morgan Tsvangirai. Well, in any case, they were starting to become a really viable opposition that may have had a real shot at power. And as a result of that, a lot of commentators feel he clung on a little longer than he should have. But in any case, he was talking about retiring and writing his memoirs, etc. And then it became the case that he fought on. So I think at this point in time, again, we're hearing murmurs that he wants to retire and enjoy his latter years, but I haven't a clue. I think once again we'll see the scenario where in the next election, which I think is in a couple of years' time, ZANU-PF will have a real prospect of losing, and we may see him standing as the candidate again. So I have no idea when things will change for the better, but there's one thing I know, which is that all dictators' reigns come to an end at some point, and oftentimes it's not very peaceful, sadly.
Henry, I know that you and Tara and the children are now happily living in Adelaide, and you've got a career ahead of you, a good career as a singer. Would you ever even slightly entertain the idea if somebody were to approach you and go back to Zimbabwe and pursue a political career?
Well, this is a question that comes up often, but I've got one major disadvantage, which is that I find it really hard to tell a lie. And, you know, in the game of politics, you gotta be pretty good.
Yeah, forget it.
So I think politics in Africa is very dirty. It's very different to politics in the West, I suppose. Now, I'm not suggesting, I'm not suggesting
Go on, suggest it.
that there isn't such a thing as corruption in the West, or mismanagement, or excess, or abuse, etc. It does happen. But in Africa, you know, here they might steal $1 million. In Africa, they steal a whole billion. It's just, they're unscrupulous there. And the other thing is, Mugabe's had a lot of political opponents just disappear. Or you know when they have that accident and they're found in the boot of a car with 2 bullets behind their head, but it was an automobile accident? That sort of thing happens as well. So I'm just not interested in that, to be honest.
On a happier note, did you ever tamper with the ball? No, the cricket ball.
I'm sad you had to clarify which ball. Hey, dirty old man. Listen.
What was the question?
Did I ever tamper with the ball? No. We used to, back in the day, I think the ICC has tightened the rules on what you can do with the ball, but back in the day when I played, you could use the surface of the pitch to scuff a ball up. So when you threw it into the keeper, you could deliberately land it on the rough stuff to, you know, you pick it up, you carefully turn it, and you could do that all day long, and the umpires didn't have the law on their side to clamp down on it. You could bowl it as you warmed up as a bowler. You could bowl it into the turf. So there were various things you could do that were well within the bounds of the law that were acceptable. But now I think they're clamping down on that. And so I suppose people have to be slightly more inventive. But this has been going on for decades. You know, Atherton had sand in his pocket, and, you know, the Pakistan team, well, they were masters at that, weren't they? Bottle tops and all sorts. So if cricket is defined by the condition of the ball, unlike other sports. In tennis, you get new balls after a few sets, you know. But in cricket, that whether the ball's reverse swinging or swinging, you know, new determines whether you can effect a dismissal. And we try to be honest players, but to be fair, we got hammered by everyone, so ball tampering wouldn't have helped.
Henry, the best players you played against, give us, say, your top 3.
Well, I'm very proud of one statistic, which is the donations of runs that I made to a lot of Australian batsmen. I'm a natural Rotarian, really. But Mark Waugh, for me, was one of the hardest bowlers I bowled to. I think one of the most graceful players to have ever played the game, really. Cover drive from him looked absolutely amazing. Played him a couple of times, and he always got the better of me. I found him impossible to bowl to. I had a bit of a spat with a man called Sachin Tendulkar, and it's on YouTube, to my shame. There's this thing that you can do with Google where it's called the right to be forgotten, and you can actually apply for anything that references to you, your name, to be expunged from any Google searches. And I'd like one particular innings, yes, where Tendulkar took about 60 off about 10 balls that I bowled to him, expunged from my record. But he was amazing. He was a very short man. If you've ever seen Sachin Tendulkar, he's not very tall, but had an amazing eye, amazing sense of time and pace, and very quick to pick up on error, whether it's too short or too full, and you know, quite a exceedingly talented batsman. In addition to him, of course, you can't talk about Tendulkar, I suppose, without talking about Lara. And I bowled to him only once in my career, and that was in Singapore, of all places. We were playing in a Coca-Cola tournament. It was a one-day international tournament. And I guess I would call it a moral victory to make the Brian Lara play and miss twice in a row. Unfortunately, the third ball went for 6. So there was no real victory there. But anyway, those three batsmen in my book, I mean, how long is a piece of string? I mean, I could talk about a guy called Marvin Atapattu, whom not many of you may have followed, but he was a Sri Lankan batsman, and he was an opening batsman, and he scored something like 3 or 4 double centuries against us in test matches. So some very tricky batsmen that I bowled to, but Jacques Kallis, you know, I mean, the list could go on from my era of Ricky Ponting, of players, Matthew Hayden. I never bowled to all of those players, but there were some exceptional players in my day. I played from 95 through to 2003, so that was right when Australia was dominant on the world stage. You still had Shane Warne, you had McGrath, Gillespie, batsmen, you had Steve Waugh, you had Mark Waugh, and many others, Michael Slater in test matches. So I played at a time when, I mean, the game has changed so much now. We've got so much cricket on TV. I think it's kind of spoilt by just the sheer quantity of matches that are played. But back in the day, I felt, and every cricketer feels this, but I felt that was when the real cricket was played. I played during the era when Wasim Akram was a bowler as well. Some of you may remember him. He could make a ball go either way. But I think every commentator I've spoken to who's older than me will always say something like, it was always harder in my day. You know, we had real bowlers then. So I feel like an old fart, like those guys saying it was harder in my day. But yet I did. I played in a time of utter dominance by this amazing Australian team that won, I think in 4 outings, they won 3 World Cups, which was extraordinary.
Henry, your life and your career have taken a number of turns over the years. You are now living here in Adelaide with Tara and sons and daughters? 2 girls. 2 girls, poor thing, 2 girls. Love them because how old are they?
4 and going on 6 in December.
4 and 6. I want to tell you about when they turn 16, but it's a public forum, I can't do it. Love them while they're 4 and 6, because they will turn 16. And you'll be driving around the streets of North Adelaide and going down to Port Adelaide and thinking they must be somewhere. They truly wouldn't have gone to Port Pirie, surely to God. No. Or they've gone down to Victor Harbour for schoolies. So please, enjoy them and love them now. Tell us about this wonderful career that you've developed for yourself with pure ability as a singer. And we look forward to a song in a moment or two. Please tell us about it.
Well, I'd be very cautious to call it a career. At the moment, I'm a stay-at-home dad. Thanks for the support. In any case, I started off singing because I got left out of every play in my junior school. I went to a really traditional English schooling system, and in my junior school and high school, we did plays. And in every year of my junior school years, they left me out of every play, including The Sound of Music. You have got to be really rubbish to get left out of The Sound of Music. There's a part for everyone. You can be the lonely goatherd for all I care. So I went to high school and I thought, I'm going to fix this. I'm going to audition. And I went and I auditioned for the play. There was a wonderful lady called Felix Westwood who'd been at Plumtree High School for 30-something years by the time I arrived. In any case, I auditioned. And as I sung, we did solos. Then we sung as a group. And as after I sung my solo, she had a wry smile on her face and wrote my name down. So I thought, I'm in, my first play. She told us to go and look at the notice board in a few days, which I did. And Julie noted a couple of things that wiped the smile off my face. The first was that the play that they were doing that year was called Oklahoma. Now, Oklahoma's old-fashioned operetta, never heard of it, never knew what it was. But the second thing that I discovered that definitely wiped the smile off my face was the fact that I'd been cast as a girl in Oklahoma. Now, I'll say this. As a girl, a cowgirl. So I gave that role my best. I gave it everything I had. But after the final performance of Oklahoma, this lady, Felix Westwood, was sniggering as she was taking my makeup off. And I said, ma'am, why are you laughing? What's so funny? She said, Olonga, I hate to say this, but you're categorically the ugliest girl we've ever had in any play. I'll be honest, a weaker man would have capitulated at that comment, but I took it as a compliment. You don't want to be too pretty in a boys-only school, right? So So the next year, I auditioned for the play again. And this time I was cast as a guy called Marco in The Gondoliers. There are two brothers, Marco and Giuseppe, and I was Marco. It was probably the most unique performance of The Gondoliers because my brother in the play, Giuseppe, was 6 foot tall and white. I have no idea how we were brothers, but anyway. And then at the end of my schooling, I took part in the Pirates of Penzance and many other performances. But my inspiration for singing really started when I was 15. I think I was 15, and I watched the Three Tenors singing in Italy, and I was hooked. I just loved this thing called opera, and that's kind of a direction I took. I'm hinting at something.
Would you sing for us?
I suppose I could. Would you? Sing as you've asked so nicely. Yes. So this is a song that will really test your prejudices, because some of you are about to hear a black man singing opera.
Nessun dorma, nessun dorma. Tu pure, principessa, nella tua fredda stanza, guardi le stelle che fremano d'amore e di speranza. Ma il mio mistero è chiuso in me, il nome mio nessun saprà. No, no, sulla tua bocca lo dirò quando la luce ed il mio bacio scioglierà il silenzio che ti fa mia. Tramontate stelle, all'alba vincerò.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I just have one more thing to say, which is, that I didn't understand a single word of what I just sung.
Ladies and gentlemen, Henry Olonga, now living with us here in Adelaide.